They saw it coming, they did nothing. Now they want to blame the weapon. But before we talk about weapons, laws or politics, we need to deal with one uncomfortable fact. This attack at Bondi didn't come out of nowhere. The warnings were there, the signs were there, and the government chose to do nothing about it. Stay with me and I'll break it down a little bit for you. Hey my friends, recently we had the Bondi terror attack, Islamist terror attack, which some of the mainstream media are refusing it to call it that. It was a pig-headed Islamic attack by anti-Semites to kill Jews. And that's what they do. That's what it says in the Quran that they must do. Now, let's just get one thing straight. Terrorism isn't just about people who are hurt there on the day. The real aim is to cause fear, to cause terror. It's about making ordinary people feel unsafe, going about their daily lives, and forcing the governments and communities to react under pressure, under emotion, and with panic. That's why after an attack, people immediately start asking, how did this happen? Who failed? And could it have been stopped? Now, almost straight away, the focus usually shifts to the weapons that were used. If a gun is involved, as it was in this case, the answer from politicians is often predictable. Wrong, but predictable. More gun laws. On the surface, that sounds sensible, but when you look at the evidence, it misses the real problem entirely. Radical Islam being allowed to fester in these Western countries is the problem, not the weapons, not the firearms. Terrorism isn't about a tool. It's about the intent. It's about the ideology, the hatred, the grievance, the radicalization. And that radicalization is happening in mosques, in Islamic centers in Australia, no matter how much the government, the politicians trying to tell us it's not. And each of those, our own government has allowed into our nation. And not only that, the government has allowed it to flourish and even emboldened radical Islam by giving it so much free rein to say what it wants against minority groups. We've been seeing that at these marches and what happened on the 8th of October 23 on the Opera House steps. If these things were said en masse about our Indigenous brothers and sisters or about the rainbow community, the government would probably order a royal commission because this is against Jews and Christians, two of the things Albo, Wong and Burke hate the most, it's been allowed to grow, it's been allowed to fester under their watch. Now, terrorism isn't about hatred, with the weapon being just whatever happens to be available at the time. Terrorism is about pure hatred, with the weapon it being just whatever is available at that point in time. Australia, it does have some of the strictest firearms laws already. Law-abiding firearms owners like me are already heavily licensed. We're constantly monitored and we're tightly controlled. Yet attacks have still happened here, just as they have in other countries with equally tough laws. Now that raises a simple question most people are afraid to ask. If gun laws were the key factor, why do attacks keep happening? Now what often gets buried in these discussions, that they want buried in these discussions, is something far more uncomfortable for those in power, like Albo. In multiple cases, authorities had warnings. Intelligence agencies, ASIO, community reports, or online monitoring flagged individuals or threats ahead of time. We just saw that with these 7 that have just been arrested on their way to Bondi from Victoria. Now, they didn't have any weapons on them. The human rights scumbag lawyers got them off, but who's to say they weren't heading to a mosque in Sydney, in New South Wales somewhere, to gather those weapons, because it was clear they allegedly had intent to cause injury, harm or terror. But now they're on the streets again. Remember, the danger wasn't invisible. The government did something about it. The police did something about it this second time. But that first time, those people were on watch lists, or at least one of them was. They had been to other countries to train in the art of ISIS, but nothing was done. Governments and security agents were warned that the attacks were imminent and highly likely, and yet no meaningful action was taken. None. No intervention, no disruption, no serious accountability afterwards either. That's not a weapons failure, my friends. That's a leadership and intelligence failure. Now, we can't put all the blame on ASIO. They could have acted, but it all comes down to the security briefings that the government get, and the government don't act on them. Now, to understand why this matters, you first have to understand the animal that terrorism actually is, and it is an animal. The people who commit terrorism are animals. Terrorism is violence used to push a political, ideological, or religious message. The goal isn't just to hurt someone, it's to scare everyone else who watches that. That's why terrorists target public places and why media coverage is so important to them. Fear spreads further than any weapon ever could. Now, research shows us that people don't wake up one day and suddenly choose to become terrorists because of an object that they see every day, like a knife or a firearm. Radicalization builds over time. It builds in mosques. It comes from toxic ideas, isolation, online propaganda, grievances, and echo chambers that reinforce extreme thinking, which is what our government has done by allowing Palestine, or by naming Palestine as a state. It has brought out into that echo chamber to reinforce the terrorist mindset. Now, by the time a weapon is chosen, the decision to do violence has already been made. These people have got it in their head. They have been radicalized. That's the part that often gets ignored. The motivation comes first. The method comes after. Now, when one option isn't available, another option is used. If guns are hard to get, terrorists use cars. If they can't use a car, a truck. If they can't use a truck, then knives. And if not knives, then homemade explosives. The intent doesn't disappear just because one tool is restricted. Terrorism adapts. That's one of its defining features. Why it's called terrorism. And that's why focusing almost entirely on the weapons, which Chris Minns and the state government, New South Wales, and the federal government are doing. They're focusing entirely on the weapons because Albo has got a mindset that he doesn't like Jews. He never has. He's proven that through his whole life in politics. Let's get it straight. Weapons don't radicalize people. Objects don't create the ideology that they live by, the ideology that they're taught, that they're brainwashed with. And laws aimed at people who already follow the rules, like myself and other firearms holders, users in Australia, do nothing to stop someone who is already committed to the mass violence. That doesn't mean public safety laws are useless, not by any means. But terrorism plays by different rules. Islam plays by different rules. That's why they have Sharia law. They don't want to follow, they don't want to integrate, they don't want to assimilate. They follow their own rules. And yes, there are some good Muslims out there. I know some. But always remember, they are always taught from the same Quran as these terrorists are. And they all have these imams who have the propensity to teach the Quran as it's written, which is violence and bloodlust. Now, they operate outside of the system entirely. They don't care about licensing systems, waiting periods, or storage regulations for firearms that we all have to. Now, we have seen this clearly in Australia in the past. The Burke Street attack in 2017 didn't involve a gun at all. A vehicle was used to run down pedestrians, followed by a knife attack. No license required, no background checks. The intent was terror, and it worked. In 2018, another Burke Street attack used a knife carried out by someone known to authorities, like one of these two in Bondi, and already on the radar due to extremist views, again like one of these ones from Bondi, and these 7 that came up from Victoria just yesterday. Now again, gun laws were completely irrelevant in those terror attacks. In both those cases, the warning signs did exist. The ideology was known. The threat wasn't imaginary. Yet the system failed to act decisively before innocent people were killed. These examples show a clear pattern. When governments can't or won't deal with radicalisation, intelligence failures and accountability at the top, just like Albo's government hasn't, he's let this fester, they reach for the easiest political distraction. And that's what this firearms ban, this new firearms law is. It's a political distraction, and we need to wake up to that. It's blaming the weapon, not those feral animals that use those weapons to cause terror. It looks like action, but it doesn't require hard questions to answer about why warnings were ignored or why agencies failed to intervene. Now, real prevention doesn't come from chasing headlines, which what the mainstream media are really good at, what the politicians are really good at. It comes from taking intelligence seriously. Trust our people in ASIO, in the AFP. I know they're not always good at what they do, not always right, but at least have a little bit of trust and listen to them. Don't just fob it off and say, we need these Islamic votes. We need more Islamists to come to Australia. Don't do that. We as the people of Australia, we are the people. We must stop the government from doing this. Real prevention, as I said, doesn't come from chasing the headlines. It comes from taking the stuff seriously, the data, the intelligence seriously. Monitoring online radicalisation properly, which they've taken kids under 16 off of social media, but they haven't taken the Islamists off, have they? They are still promoting their propaganda, their radicalisation, and holding authorities accountable is what we must do, especially when they are warned and they do nothing about it. And when attacks do happen, because no system is perfect, attacks will happen. These people are hell-bent on bloodlust. Preparedness matters. We need fast police responses, clear command structures, well-trained emergency services, which our paramedics, our fireys and that are, but the police didn't seem to take, or they didn't seem to get there quickly while people were being killed. And practical security we need in public spaces will save lives. There's many people talking about giving some firearms owners, the right to conceal carry. I've got reservations about that, but that's another topic altogether. These things that I've been talking about work no matter what weapon is used when we listen to the intelligence. Now, the hard truth is this: terrorism isn't defeated by banning objects. It's defeated by confronting ideas, acting on warnings, and refusing to ignore danger just because dealing with it is politically inconvenient, which is what's happened since October 7, 2023. Dealing with the anti-Semitism and the hatred of Jews and Christians has been inconvenient for Albanese and his government, Penny Wong and Tony Burke. It's been inconvenient for them. So instead, they've always disliked the Jewish state. They've always disliked Jews and Israel. So they came out with, ignoring all the warnings, they call Palestine a state. They have fed the terrorist agenda. They have emboldened it. They have empowered it with that one statement in Parliament. And they need to be held accountable for that. It is Australians that are now suffering for that. I won't say the word because I don't swear, but that Wally's decision at the top job in Australia has caused grief, distress, and terror. He is complicit in that terror. So please, my friends, don't blame and jump straight away to agreeing with these firearms laws. Those gunmen could have been taken down within the first minutes of police arriving. But they weren't. And we have to pray for those people who are killed, those who are injured. And also pray for the Muslim and the other people that ran front on to these people, to these terrorists, and confronted them and disarmed them, because they did more in the initial outset than what the police did. It's the truth, my friends. It is the truth. Don't listen to the government's rhetoric on this, because they are trying to give you a political distraction. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'm Brian. This is Voice in the Wilderness Australia, where I try and bring these things to you in a different light, with just a slight Christian sort of base to it. But by doing that, I'm hoping I bring a moral base. Thanks again for listening. Bless you. Until next time.